The best developers in the world are tasked with making these apps and sites as addictive as possible. They are intentionally built like casinos. Swipe up and let that magic pinwheel dictate your afternoon. Even if you aren't paying with your dollars, you're paying with something far more valuable: your time. It will become increasingly hard to pursue your passions due to your divided attention. But that means if you can be one of the few people to carve out time on a daily basis, it's easier than ever to get ahead and succeed. To streamline our attention and reduce the number of choices we have to make, many people have adopted minimalism. The main tenets of minimalism being that clutter is costly, thus we have to be very intentional with what we are taking into our lives. Always optimizing. Being a minimalist in the physical world is now only half the battle as we spend more and more time in front of a screen. So how can we be intentional about how we spend our time online to ensure that years of our life don't go by with the flick of a finger? Now, lucky for you, there's a fantastic book that walks you through exactly how to do this by Cal Newport. You may recognize that name from books like Deep Work or So Good They Can't Ignore You, but while these books are good, his book that has had by far the most impact on me is Digital Minimalism. In this video, we will discuss 3 main takeaways. First being the critical difference between connection and conversation, how we are all deprived of a critical resource, and it's not vitamin D. And finally, number 3, step-by-step plan on how to become a digital minimalist and take back your time. And if you're new here, I'm Wilson and I make videos about how to improve your life through creating and breaking habits. If that sounds interesting, consider subscribing. I found this book at the perfect time. In the peak of lockdowns, my life was on fast forward. For the first few months, I truly have no recollection of what I did. I was spending the equivalent of another full-time job on my phone. I was lonely and isolated, and social media gave me a little taste of socialization. Humans. But then I got this book, and as I was reading it, a light bulb went off in my head. Social media, email, texting, and other platforms we use on a daily basis merely simulate connection. But very little is gained from connection. The real gain happens from conversation. And we need to be careful when using technology because it can trick our brain into thinking that connection is a suitable alternative to conversation. An example used in the book is a woman, let's call her Wilsonita, has a friend that has a new baby. And she feels like if she doesn't comment on the latest Instagram post of that baby, then it would be a callous omission. But if this friendship is important, this concern should motivate me, Wilsonita, to go through the time it takes to actually set up a conversation. Actually visiting the new kid will return much more than a simple comment. This demonstrates a key mindset shift that Cal Newport is trying to push. Email, social media, text messaging are not conversation. Instead, they should be categorized as connection, which has a much lower value. But Wilson, I do have conversation. I DM people all the time. I text them and we have conversations. That solves the issue, right? I thought the same thing until I read the statement. Phones have become woven into a fraught sense of obligation and friendship. Being a friend means being on call, tethered to your phone, ready to be attentive. What can be accomplished over an hour of text messaging can be done in a 5-minute phone call. I can say with confidence that I used to hate phone calls. I didn't want to bother people, and why have a phone call when you could just send a simple text? And it seems like my generation is getting further and further away from phone calls. Honestly, the cheat code for this is to make it so you are each other's accountability partners. What is a goal that you've been trying to pursue but haven't gotten enough traction on? Is it starting a business, fitness, or another passion? Make this call a weekly check-in to see if each other are making progress on their goals. For me, it was making YouTube videos. I've been posting every day for 2 months, every week. Jeez. But after I moved to New York City, me and this friend were seeing each other less and less. Before, we would see each other at least once a week, and now it was more than once a month. but now with that weekly phone call, we're closer than ever. Cal Newport and I are not saying to end all connection types of communication, but instead be more intentional about how you're spending your time messaging. A recommendation in the book that I have taken to heart is to bulk your answering of messages. For instance, instead of always being on call when someone texts you and answering immediately, bulk it into a few times over the day where you answer text messages. To really make progress on our goals, we need to have long blocks of dedicated work time. And this cannot work if we're constantly being interrupted by notifications we feel like we need to answer. Most of the time, the messages that we get are not time sensitive. Sure, some messages require a timely response, but a vast percentage of them are not timely and urgent. What I've done is answering text messages and emails at specific times during the day. Once in the morning, once midday, and then once in the evening. Using this, my phone pickups has went from over 150 with 8 hours a day on my phone down to under 30 pickups with an average of 1 hour a day on my phone. Shockingly, the less I am available, the more people value our time together. Thus, we're making sure that every moment counts. I now have more friends than ever with a depth I've never seen before. That being said, conversation can only take you so far. As someone once said, probably Churchill, conversation enriches the understanding, but solitude is the school of genius. By implementing the lessons in part 1, we've been able to hopefully deepen our friendships, but this may come at the cost of our most important friendship, with ourselves. The easiest way to deepen this connection is through solitude. What is solitude? Cal Newport describes it as a subjective state in which your mind is free from input from other minds. This doesn't explicitly mean you have to be alone, but it comes most easily when you're alone. Our generation is the lab rats for these new technologies, and we are losing the battle. Our mental health is worse than any other generation. An example used in the book is a common thing I hear too many people say is they always have TV or music on to quiet their mind. Your mind is so loud because it never gets a chance to think in peace. The only way to quiet your mind is through quiet. When we constantly have music in our ears and screens in front of our face, we're suffering from what Cal Newport would call solitude deprivation. This is a state where you spend close to zero time alone with your own thoughts. We have lost the ability to process and make sense of our emotions or to reflect on who we are and what really matters. Many extremely successful people have said that the number one reason for their success is the vast amount of time that they have alone with their thoughts. Many of us have our best thoughts in the shower because it is one of the only times during our day when we aren't being overwhelmed with sensory inputs. It doesn't have to be like this. We can give our brain many opportunities over the day to chew on our thoughts and to give us similar shower thought-like insights. So solitude is important, and in the last part of the video, we'll discuss how to extract time for that solitude. But when we have the time for it, what do? The key is to reduce passive consumption. You may have a lot of alone time at the moment, but usually it's spent with some kind of external stimuli. We tend to look at boredom as something to crush, something to get rid of. But maybe that boredom is telling you something. Listen to it. Some examples of solitude activities being art, meditation, watching paint dry, or my favorite, the 2 W's, writing and walking. But we can't just let this solitude time fall into our laps. We need to actively look for it. This may sound insane, but schedule it. Turn off your phone, throw it out the window, and just sit with your thoughts. This will be uncomfortable at first, and there will be an urge to pick up something that gives you an immediate relief. But remember, that's just kicking the can down the road. We will experience this again. You might as well deal with it now. When we've become a digital minimalist, we will have an abundance of time to spend in solitude, but we also need to balance that correctly with leisure time. Time to play, have fun, and relax. So to quote my boy Cal, in an ideal scenario, digital technology is still present, but now subordinated to a support role, helping you set up or maintain your leisure activities, but not acting as the primary source of leisure itself. Volunteer, hang out with friends, join a sports league, book club, go-karting, just join things. And block out time in the calendar so that it doesn't just get eaten up by other activities. Remember, all work but no play makes... maybe that's the wrong quote. How about, play is our brain's favorite way of learning. Yeah, there we go, much better. One thing that I've been meaning to implement from the book is a way to turn mindless consumption into a leisure activity you can enjoy with friends. If you're addicted to watching TV, YouTube, make it so that you can't watch it alone. Meaning, whenever you watch it, you have to be with friends. This means we're not depriving ourselves entirely of something we enjoy, but instead making it a social activity that's now leisure time as opposed to just a time waste. Okay, so now we know what to do with our time, but how can we scrape it back to use it properly for solitude and leisure? In the book, there's a great example about the Amish. Now, when I said Amish, you pictured the road fellows riding a horse. We tend to think of them not using technology, but actually, Amish people do use technology, but they use it in a way that maximizes their potential benefit while hedging the potential downside. They will use tractors, but with metal wheels, so it can't be driven on the road. Electricity is fine, as long as you aren't connected to the grid. Now, I'm not saying that we should become Amish, but we can put a more critical lens on the technologies that we're allowing into our lives. The Amish start with things that they value most and then work backwards to see if the technology is in support or in contrast to that core goal. The key to figuring out what technology is benefiting you and what is hurting you, you can try the tactic in the book called the digital declutter. This is whereby you put aside a 30-day period which you take a break from all optional technologies in your life. This is not saying goodbye to work email, but instead social media and all those apps on your phone that you waste time with. During this 30-day break, explore and rediscover activities and behaviors that you find satisfying and meaningful. This could be looking back to your childhood to remember what you used to find fun. This will not be easy. The largest mistake that you can make during this period is not determining what you're going to do with this newfound time. So make a list of all the activities that you're going to try. This should be a period of extreme experimentation. As I like to say, aggressively try things. At the end of your break, reintroduce optional technologies into your life, starting from a blank slate. For each technology you reintroduce, determine what value it serves in your life and how specifically you will use it so as to maximize the value. I love this quote from the book. It's easy to be seduced by the small amounts of profit offered by the latest app or service, but then forget its cost in terms of the most important resource we possess, the minutes of our life. During the pandemic, I did a digital declutter, and after a month of not using social media, I found that it actually offers me very little value. 3 years later, and I've stayed off social media. My phone time has decreased and I'm much happier. But that doesn't mean that it was always smooth sailing.